lecture series 371 of the Obafemi University, Ile-Ife. The lecture is presented by Professor Babatunde Ogunsina, and it's titled "The Man Crops Machine, Nexus, Memoir of a Post-Harvest Engineer." Professor Babatunde Ogunsina began his career in agricultural engineering as a student of the Polytechnic Ibadan in 1983. He obtained ordinary national diploma in 1986, being one of the best 4 in a class of 20, the first set in agricultural engineering, Okiogun Polytechnic. He obtained his BSc in agricultural engineering from Obafemi University in 1991-1992 session, and later MSc and PhD degrees from University of Ibadan in 1996 and 2009, respectively. Professor Ogunsina worked as a shift production supervisor and later assistant production manager at Cashew Nut Processing Industries PLC, Eleyele, Ibadan, in the early 90s. He later joined Oyo State Local Government Service as an agricultural officer until 2004, when he assumed duties in Obafemi University, Ile-Ife, as lecturer 2. He rose through the ranks and became a professor on the 1st of October 2016. With more than 30 years of varied experience in industry, civil service, and academia, his areas of interest are in post-harvest engineering, crop processing, agri-process machine design, properties of biomaterials, especially deformation mechanics and cracking of oilseeds and edible nuts. Professor Ogunsina has collaborated with experts across various disciplines in engineering, agriculture, food and nutrition sciences, and technology management, inside and outside OAU, with more than 70 research articles published in reputable high-impact journals and refereed conference proceedings to his credit. He has mentored more than 100 students at bachelor's and supervised 6 at master's and 5 at PhD levels. In 2021 and 2022 consecutively, the African Science Directory ranked him among the top 50 research scientists in OAU. I think it's worth clapping for. Professor Ogunsina has spoken and presented papers in many international conferences in many countries in Africa, Middle East, Asia, Europe, and America. In addition, he has served as judge for Students' Innovation Challenge on the reputed platform of the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers, assessor of faculties in some Nigerian universities, and the current head of AEE department from 2020 till date. He's also the national chairman of Students' Affairs Committee of the Nigerian Institution of Agricultural Engineers. His professional affiliations include Nigerian Society of Engineers, Ile-Ife branch, Nigerian Institution of Agricultural Engineers, West African Society of Agricultural Engineering, Pan-African Society of Agricultural Engineering, Indian Society of Agricultural Engineers, and American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers. He had won various awards and scholarships, and these include the scholarship of the United Nations Center for Trade and Development to National Engineering Research Center for Information Technology in Agriculture. He won the prestigious United Nations University Research Fellowship of Tokyo, Japan, at Central Food Technology Research Institute, India. Israel Mashab Scholarship and Carnegie Travel Grant to Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He's a co-investigator on a TED Fund-supported research on special palm oil production in Nigeria in 2019. In 2022, he won the Netherlands Fellowship at Wageningen Center for Development and Innovation, the Netherlands. Professor Ogunsina is hereby presented to deliver his inaugural lecture. Welcome.
Hello. 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 The Vice Chancellor, sir, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this sacred moment fulfills one of the greatest obligations I owe this university, where I've had my best adventure in life and career. The one-off intellectual feast that an inaugural lecture connotes grants me this rare opportunity to present my scholarly digests. It is noteworthy that 6 of the 370 inaugural lectures which have been delivered in this university came from the Department of Agriculture and Environmental Engineering. Standing on the legacies bequeathed by my predecessors and before this distinguished audience today, I present the 371st inaugural lecture of this great institution under the title, The Man, Crops, Machine, Nexus, Memoir of a Postharvest Engineer. Ogunye, 1980, in his inaugural lecture, said that an inaugural lecture may be either an account of the progress made over time in a particular discipline, if the inaugural lecturer also occupies the professorial chair to which headship is attached. It could be a professor's own work within the framework of his research interests, or a general topic where the professor has something novel and stimulating to offer. However, February 2005 stated that an inaugural lecture may be either the professor's autobiography or scripts of a turning point for a professor setting new agenda for future engagements. Since I occupy the professorial chair to which headship is attached presently in the Department of Obafemi, in the Department of Agriculture and Engineering here in this university, my lecture today shall be cross-cutting. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I do not consider it a mere privilege, a mere coincidence, that this lecture, the 7th from the Department of Agriculture and Environmental Engineering, is holding 7 years after my chair was established. In the 3rd year of my tenure on the professorial chair to which headship is attached, and more than 3 decades after I obtained my bachelor's degree from this institution. In spiritual parlance, the numbers 3 and 7 represent the Trinity and perfection, respectively. Hence, I am most persuaded that this pious moment is the most appropriate to decongest my brain and reprogram myself afresh. I am particularly enthralled that this lecture coincides with the Golden Jubilee anniversary of my darling wife, Mrs. Prof Ogunsina, whom I met as a beautiful young lady 30 years ago. When I scripted the first lines of this lecture some years back, reflection on my teenage years was what struck my mind. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir. Permit me to reminisce very briefly on this note. I completed my high school education in 1983 at age 14 and a half. Though I was a former student of fine art, I was in the science class. That year, I got admitted simultaneously to the University of Ibadan to pursue agriculture and forestry and the Baptist School of Nursing, Ogbomoso. My mom had earlier insisted that I was too young to leave home at that age. She preferred me to step down in a tertiary institution in Shaki, where I grew up, till I attained the age of 16, after which I could proceed to the university. My dad, who wanted my education to be as fast as possible, preferred the pace I was going. I wouldn't say I liked nursing because I believe it's a ladies' profession. So I resumed at the University of Ibadan. I got a best space allocation in B2 Kuti Hall, but summarily I could not proceed with registration because I was less than 16. As fate had it, that was the year when Polytechnic Ibadan, Shaki Satellite Campus, advertised agricultural engineering. My dad simply bought the form because it was close to agriculture and forestry, for which I was admitted at the University of Ibadan. And that began the amazing adventure that my career in agricultural engineering turned out to be today. I was primarily captivated by the name of the course, being a fusion of two fundamental disciplines, agriculture and engineering. I also enjoy having to explain my course of study to my friends almost all the time, because agricultural engineering was emerging and not so popular in those days. I obtained my ordinary national diploma in 1986 as the youngest and one of the best in the class of 20. We were the first set of agricultural engineering from the Polytechnic Ibadan, Shaki Satellite Campus, now the Okeogun Polytechnic. After 1 year of internship at Oyo North Agricultural Development Project, I was admitted by direct entry to the Department of Agricultural Engineering. I graduated in the 1991-92. Afterwards, got employed as a shift production supervisor at the Nut Processing Industry, LA Ibadan. During that period, I obtained my master's degree from the University of Ibadan amidst highly dense industrial schedules. I had no idea I would be an academic until I met Emeritus Professor E.B. Lucas as the supervisor of my master's degree project in 1995. Our encounter that year gave me the first impetus to crave a career in research and academic. By the 6th year of my engagement in that industry, it was clear to me that the job wouldn't lead me towards the future I desired. I simply resigned my appointment in 2001. Although my plan was to join the Polytechnic Ibadan, somehow I ended up in the local government service of Oyo State as an agricultural officer with nostalgia. I recall how Mommy Oyewumi, an elder and a co-worker in my church, Trem Felele Ibadan, requested me to accompany her to Ile-Ife on the day Toye, her last born, was to resume as a jambite in 2001. I decided to visit my department and greet some of my lecturers, Professors Oshunade and Adekalu in particular. Incidentally, Professor Oshunade was the head of department. Our brief conversation that day was what metamorphosed into the chronicle that brought me standing on this dais this evening, performing the distinguished academic rite that an inaugural lecture connotes. Following this totos odyssey, I now present my story. Ide alo mi re o. Prologue. The grand opulence, lavish expenditure of resources, and the engineering content of many natural phenomena at creation suggests that the Creator, the Almighty God, is an engineer. The similarity, can you imagine? The similarity of St. Peter's Basilica with big cathedrals and the architecture of the anthill. Or the development of ships from the swimming of dolphins, sharks, and whales in oceans. The design and construction of aircraft from the behavior of large birds in flight. Or the design of flow system from the principle of surface runoff and interflow of water in natural channels in and out of oceans around the globe. The design and configuration of heat engines, like human bodies, which converts the energy derived from food and utilizes it to do work. The design and construction of automobiles, based on the principle of traction generated by horse-driven carts, or how microprocessors and robots are built to function like human brain. This suggests that any technological innovation in future will still have to mimic nature. Most ancient mythologies about creation leave no ambiguity that man is the most superior being on this planet. Given the biblical narrative, Adam was mandated to keep the Garden of Eden for food, shelter, and clothing. The only tools he had were his limbs and physical body as power source for tillage, transportation, hunting, and recreation, while he wandered around the garden barefooted. Therefore, it would be right to postulate that agricultural engineering began by man's first attempt to till the earth. My theory aligns with Olayanju 2016, who in his inaugural lecture construed the soul as a faculty of reasoning and logic, tuned to receive, interpret, and translate scientific inspiration into physical elements in the form of machines, and use them to accomplish various complex tasks. Since man's immediate occupation was to keep the garden, he began by first solving problems related to agriculture. As he continued using his physical body and strength as a source of power to keep the garden expanded and grew in complexity until it became difficult for him to feed a large family through the arduous routine of tillage, using bare hands. One then realized how limited it was, using only his physical body as a power source. He consequently began to domesticate donkeys, horses, camels, buffaloes, and dogs for various activities on the farm. Man reached a turning point when he discovered fire and began to explore ores and minerals, too cold and oil forging, to fabricate crude tools to keep the garden. As man continued to innovate, improved hand tools, animal-drawn implements, and the simple machines were developed for land cultivation, animal husbandry, and crop processing. All this leaves no ambiguity that man is an agricultural engineer by default, and that the best of engineering is yet to come as man continues to keep the garden. Most activities related to human livelihood on this planet revolve first around food. It is commonly said in Yoruba that that is, when you subtract hunger from poverty, poverty will tend towards zero. It simply implies that lack of food is the most critical dimension of poverty. Adekoya 2014 pointed out that man minus machine is either a laborer or a slave. We can therefore also say mathematically that man plus machine is a master. Our world today is so stratified because only systems where man works with machine dominate, and we continue to do till the end of time. Let me therefore remark that among the several phenomena that drive our world, the man-crops-machine nexus is spectacular. Of agricultural engineering education in Nigeria, Nigerian universities. Agricultural engineering has evolved beyond the fivefold major blocks. Teaching curricula are changing rapidly in all regions of the world, thereby unbundling traditional knowledge into emerging fields so we can uplift scholarships and innovations on a global scale. This discipline now encompasses computer-aided agriculture, smart farming, digital water saving, precision farming, big data management, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and agricultural biotechnology, including integrated pest management. Ogunsina and Taiwo, 2018. The education and training of agricultural engineers in 27 Nigerian universities, focusing on institutional capacity, succession plan, human resource development, changes in teaching curriculum, and postgraduate training with respect to emerging trends. This was with the view to redirecting agricultural engineering education towards the Nigerian agricultural transformation agenda, and Nigerian universities to produce competent agricultural engineers to drive that agenda. Considering Nigeria's vast agricultural resources and its strategic position as Africa's most populous nation, this work provoked educational institutions in Nigeria to focus on areas of comparative advantage in response to national agricultural development and food security. Modern curricular rebranding in African academic institutions must begin to consider mainstreaming indigenous knowledge and practices into teaching and research. This should bear relevance in the core curriculum minimum academic standard of the Nigerian University Commission for engineering programs in future. Although the academia as an industry in Nigeria is generally challenged by various forms of nauseating lack of funding and instability, our hopes and aspirations for a better future must not diminish. We must keep redesigning what we do and modifying them and how we do them while focusing on positive outcomes. A post-harvest engineering brief. My voyage in post-harvest engineering in the last 2 decades focused on the development of appropriate technologies for agricultural products, crop processing, value addition to edible nuts and oilseed, including biomass conversion into alternative fuels. Many of the appropriate technologies that we have developed are providing interventions in the value chains of many tropical crops today. I was drafted into the Post-Harvest Technology Research Group by Professor M.O. Faborode soon after I joined this university about 20 years ago. My engagement in that group helped to structure my research focus from the beginning. Today, the PHARG has evolved into various research clusters which are driving significant interventions in this university and our immediate communities. The earliest initiative to establish grains reserve was during the period of severe famine in the historic Middle East, when King Pharaoh freed Joseph and appointed him as the pre-em of Egypt. Joseph's initiative in ensuring year-round supply of grains in the Egyptian economy underlies all the technologies that reduces harvest losses, equalize harvest between seasons, and ensure that the harvest reaches end users. At that historic time, the need to control moisture movement, stored grains, prevent infestation of pests and diseases throughout the farming, and maintain stored products in an environment safe from all extraneous influences couldn't have been a child's play. It must have involved the basic application of engineering principles beyond man as a barefooted wanderer and laborer on the earth's crust. The packaging, transportation, and distribution of store food products to a teeming population of consumers after that famine must have involved the use of simple machines, including King Pharaoh's horse-driven carts that we read about in the scriptures. That is post-harvest engineering. A cursory look at figure 2 shows that losses begin when harvested crops leave the farm gate. These losses add up to 1.3 billion tons yearly. The Nigerian Food Products Research Institute estimated that 50% of these harvested crops get lost before reaching the end users annually. While the federal government of Nigeria recently put the economic loss or economic losses at an equivalence of 3.5 trillion annually. The question we should therefore ask at this juncture is not whether we produce enough food or not, but what happens to that harvest. While many African farmers could rarely afford modern technologies for processing and storage of agricultural produce, most of our viable indigenous knowledge and practices are either outrightly lost, grossly undermined, or not upgraded at all. This is partly the bane of food security in Africa, the appropriate technology movement. The concept of a village-based technology may be traced to Mahatma Gandhi, although there was no name for it by then. In 1955, a British economist, Dr. Schumacher, pointed out some pitfalls of introducing advanced technologies to developing nations. In his book, Small is Beautiful, Dr. Schumacher played a significant role in inspiring the appropriate technology movement, which advocates small-scale, decentralized, environmentally sustainable technologies and enterprises for less developed economies. Such technologies, which were first called intermediate technologies, transformed to Intermediate Technology Research Group in 1966. These technologies envision a people-centered, energy-efficient, and locally controlled projects tailored and appropriated into people's socio-economic and cultural circumstances in the less developed regions of the world. This underlies how the name appropriate technologies involve. Industrial emancipation is more likely to transform into economic development in Africa if we focus on local skills and allow indigenous knowledge to evolve from one generation to another before it gets lost. However, it must be mentioned that technology which supports or promotes our indigenous practices, preserve the African in us, boost food production, and save harvest will serve us better than our engagement with enticing but vicious megatrends of the West. While the man minus machine equals a slave theory subsists, we must not allow development in any particular region of the world to alienate us from who we are and render us perpetually subservient to the West. Edible nuts and oilseeds. Among the world's most prized edible nuts, such as pistachio, almonds, macadamia, and hazelnut, cashew nut has been the most successful in Nigeria. Nigeria, as one of the major African producing countries in the past decades, and up till now, has a competitive advantage in organic cashew production. Based on my role at the cashew nut processing industry, Ibadan, I advocated the huge but unexplored investment opportunities on the cashew value chain in sub-Saharan Africa, where it has found favorable conditions for growth. Suggestions that may influence policy decisions and stimulate investments were provided to develop appropriate technologies for the Nigerian cashew industry. As an employee in the cashew nut industry, the immediate challenge I had to confront was low whole kernel outturn during shelling. Raw cashew nuts usually require thermal treatment in the form of roasting or steam boiling prior to shelling or decortication. This hardens the nut shell, making it brittle and more amenable to fracture on impact loading. During this process, the caustic CNSL usually gets burnt, denatured, or dislodged, depending on the type of pretreatment adopted. The peculiar curvature of cashew nuts and the presence of this CNSL make cashew nut shelling more difficult than that of other nuts. It must be white, wholesome, and uncontaminated by CNSL before it conforms with international export quality specifications. The Nigerian cashew industries have suffered great limitations because 25 to 40% of kernels get broken or contaminated, whereas whole kernel outturn reaches 90% with the same manual systems in India. This largely limited the obtainable revenue from the cashew industry as Nigerian cashew nut gets massively exported to India and Vietnam. Previous studies focused on the development of various types of shelling machine to improve old kernel outing, with little emphasis on the associated processing conditions and variety of differences. With this curiosity, my earliest research was directed towards the effect of treatment by hot oil roasting and steam boiling on the physical properties of local varieties of cashew nuts. Furthermore, I investigated the deformation characteristic of pretreated nuts under uniaxial loading as an essential parameter for fracture in the design of cashew nut shelling machines. Inspired by findings from this work, I focused my doctoral research on pre-shelling conditions and parameters for optimizing whole kernel outing of cashew nuts during processing. Predictive models were developed for whole kernel outing of pretreated nuts. The adequacy was confirmed by comparing experimental values with predictive values. The result shows that the pre-shelling treatment of cashew nut enhanced all kernel outing to a large extent. It was established that the effect of moisture content, roasting time, and steam exposure time, or non-size distribution are not enough to estimate whole kernel outing in cashew nut processing. Instead, it is by an interaction of these parameters. These findings provided valuable insight for cashew nut processing industries on the method of pretreatment to which raw nuts must be subjected to achieve optimal whole kernel outing. This was a significant development for the labor-intensive technology involved in that industry. On an industrial tour to some cottage processors in Lagos and Oyo and Kwara State in 2005, we observed with great concern how women, through arduous tasks, crack roasted cashew nut with manually wooden mallets or using a hand-operated knife cutter of the Indian manual system. The knife edge of most mechanical crackers does not give satisfactory old kernel outing, while manual methods are tedious and labor-intensive due to the corrosive action of CNSL or machine operators. Awolowo and Ogunsina, 2007, developed a novel box-shaped mechanism for cracking roasted nuts. This machine has a hinged and spring-loaded mild steel lid over a base on which a cast aluminum feed tray sits. The tray is machined to hold 25 nuts at a time, and roasted nuts get cracked by impact load of the lid when it is closed. In another study, Ogunsina, 2013, investigated the crackability and chemical composition of pretreated nuts, considering 3 nut grades and 2 methods of pre-shelling treatment. The pretreated nut was shelled, and crackability was derived as a ratio of the weight of wholly shelled nuts to the total weight of nuts fed into that machine. The average values of crackability of raw roasted and steam boiled nut was 76%, 100%, and 99% respectively. It was established that crackability of roasted nut was higher than that of steam boiled nuts, and pre-shelling treatment affected whole kernel outing significantly. The pretreatment showed no significant difference in the chemical composition of cashew kernels. Fresh insights on Moringa oleifera seeds value chain. Changes in the complexity of human livelihood and increased global awareness of the relationship between food and health are driving a robust market for edible nuts and nutritious oilseed in human diets, thereby provoking unprecedented investment opportunities in producing countries. This also sets new boundaries in providing special dietary needs for the aged, children, and people with unusual food requirements. Edible nuts and oilseed are particularly rich in vital minerals, which are rarely found in daily diets. Although the most exotic nuts in the world are largely found in the tropics, other non-conventional nuts and oilseed are also found. Screening efforts regarding their physical-chemical properties, functionality, and bioactive components of such species have become necessary to optimize their potentials in local food systems. Hitherto, Moringa oleifera seed was known as a flocculant for water clarification, but fresh leaves, the flowers, the immature pods are prized vegetables in Southeast Asia and some parts of Africa. As a principal investigator on the United Nations multidisciplinary project on value addition to Moringa oleifera seeds, the extractability and functionality of Moringa seed protein were investigated as ingredients in a variety of formulated foods, especially in the developing countries where malnutrition is prevalent. Govardhan Singh et al. Reported the presence of various phenolic compounds, antioxidant, and antibacterial constituents in the Moringa seed flour. information regarding moringa seed protein, high oleic acid, fat, and bioactive compounds introduced novelty to its use as ingredient for functional foods and nutraceuticals, thereby attracting concerted economic interest to its production and trade. The sensory characteristics and nutritional composition of processed food may be influenced by some physical treatments. The effects of these physical treatments on the properties of moringa seed showed that hydrothermal treatment greatly influence its physical properties. Although soaking has been reported as being influential on the physical and hydration properties of legumes, it was found that the physical chemical properties of moringa seed were affected more by cooking than soaking. The optimal protein extraction from defatted moringa seed flour was obtained at pH 4 with 0.5 molar calcium chloride. It was notably observed that the solvent to flour ratio had no significant effect on the protein extractability. Given the high protein and vital nutrients in moringa seed, the work suggested that it may be considered by processors of edible nuts and seed for food-based application, such as cooked, roasted, mixed or spiced nuts. Ogunsina and Rada, upon this premise, developed a process for debittering moringa seed. The successful removal of bitter principle from moringa seed and the promising functionality of its flour indicated that it may be explored as an alternative protein in food products development. Germination was also explored as a natural process for obtaining an improved moringa seed flour that is free from thermal treatment or chemical modification. The outcome of this research includes the use of the bitter moringa seed as an enrichment for bread and cookies, the use of germinated moringa seed flour as enrichment for wheat-based cake, and the development of a soup mix from the bitter moringa seed flour. The result shows that blending with the bitter moringa seed flour at different levels alter the organoleptic properties of bread and cookies, though the difference were not significant. The products were of acceptable rheological and sensory characteristics. The bread had an acceptable typical moringa seed taste, while the peculiar nutty mouthful of moringa seed was sensed in cookies. The products were generally richer in essential nutrients such as protein, iron, and calcium. In addition, substituting wheat flour with germinated moringa seed flour was found to increase the physical and nutritional properties of cake samples. There was no significant difference in the color, aroma, texture, and crust of cake blends with 100% wheat compared with wheat germinated moringa seed flour composite. The taste and overall acceptability of cakes up to 30% germinated moringa seed flour substitution were not significantly different from that of the whole cake. Furthermore, the soup sample enriched with 0.5 the bitter moringa seed flour had the highest overall sensory acceptability, with 4 grams per 100 grams protein more than the control. Scanning electron micrographs show samples of soup enriched with the bitter moringa seed as a dense, continuous agglomerated protein strands of irregular sizes and shapes. As the debited moringa flour increased in the concentration, the viscosity and body of the soup also increased. The use of moringa seed as functional food ingredient, as narrated, is extending the utilization of the moringa flour as an economic crop in Africa and Asia, where it found favorable conditions for growth but grossly underutilized. Ogunsina et al. Studied the extraction, quality, and stability of cold-pressed and solvent-extracted moringa oleifera seed oil. The oil was found to contain 78 to 79 of oleic acid, hence considered to be of similar characteristic with olive. Given its high oleic acid content, cold-pressed moringa seed oil showed better oxidative stability and frying stability than most commercial vegetable oils. It shows enough promise to be considered a more stable and healthier substitute for culinary purposes. In addition, moringa seed oil is rich in bioactive compounds and natural antioxidants such as tocopherols, phenolics, peptides, and carotenoids, while exhibiting better anti-radical activity than most common refined vegetable oils. The deca nut value chain. The deca fruit, Avringia gabonensis, embeds a hard nut, which when cracked yields an oil-rich and high mucilage seed. Powdered deca seeds produce a thick, viscous, slimy consistency when mixed with hot water, usually known as ogbono soup. The seed oil and meal are potential base materials for pharmaceuticals, conventionaries, and cosmetics. Deca nut is therefore widely traded in West Africa. Thin layer drying studies normally helps to understand the unique drying kinetics of any particular food material. Hence, we study the thin layer drying characteristics of deca seed and nuts at 4 various drying temperatures. The data were fitted into existing drying models. The modified Henderson-Purvis model gave the best fit for deca seed, while the 2-term model was best for deca nuts. The data are helpful in simulating deep bed drying conditions and quantifying design parameters for drying equipment. Furthermore, the cracking of deca nuts has presented severe challenges to local processors, considering the arduous task it constitutes during processing. Ogunsina et al., 2008, developed a table-mounted device for cracking deca nuts. The machine has a toggle mechanism which comprises of a slider block and a fixed block. Fracture was based on the deformation characteristics of deca nuts under uniaxial compression. When actuated, the slider compresses the nut shell to failure along its line of symmetry. The experimentation machine gave 100% cracking efficiency for deca nuts. Furthermore, Ogunsina et al. Worked on a motorized version of the machine. The significant components include a sliding hammer, a power transmission unit, a chain conveyor, and cracking trace. The experimental machine was evaluated with pretreated nuts, and its cracking efficiency and throughput were found to be 72% and 12.86 kilogram per hour, respectively. Similarly, Ogunsina et al. Documented the physical-chemical properties of deca seed and characteristics of its oil. With about 68.4%, the fatty acid profile of deca nut shows high composition of myristic and lauric acid. Deca seed oil is one of the richest known sources of myristic acid, hence the base material for fruit coating. This promises an avenue for better income by deca nut farmers in areas where it has found favorable conditions for growth. Preliminary studies of carrier seed protein and oil. Carrier Hildegardia bateri is a wild tropical ornamental tree known for the bright red flowers it produces during the dry season and the pea-like oil seed that each flower matures into. Although there are reports on the use of carrier seed as a food condiment by locals in some part of Africa, the physical-chemical properties of the flower revealed that the presence of specific toxic components subject to further investigation. Natural fermentation and cooking showed a reduction in the nutritional properties and an increase in protein content for seeds that were fermented for 1 to 3 days and cooked at 100 degrees centigrade. The flour indicated high foaming and emulsion properties, while water absorption capacity and swelling power increased with increasing temperature between 60 and 90 degrees centigrade. Adebayo et al. Proposed the carrier seed oil as a base material for biofuel production, following an evaluation of its physical-chemical properties. Properties of oilseeds and edible nuts focus on process parameters for oil expression. Some aspect of my research focused on the physical, mechanical, and chemical properties of selected underutilized species of tropical crops to provide essential data for quantifying machine parameters and post-harvest operations such as decortication, oil expression, and particle size reduction. For those in nutshell, I studied their deformation characteristics and fracture mechanics with respect to the sharing of the nutshell in between compression surfaces. Some crops for which such data have been documented include sponge gourd, moringa, deca nut, etc., and some West African food spices. Although seed oil expression is an essential economic venture in many developing countries, local oil expression methods are energy-sapping, time-consuming, and wasteful. Understanding the associated parameters for specific oilseed is vital in developing new or adaptation of existing machine. Some of my works in this regard include the optimization of process parameters for the determination of oil point pressure and yield from non-conventional oilseed, which were listed earlier. Multiple regression equations were adopted to predict oil point pressure of oilseed based on moisture content, temperature, and duration of heat. Findings from this work are vital in the quantification of machine parameters, operation scheduling, process optimization for labor, and energy efficiency in seed oil expression. mitigating post-harvest losses in Nigeria, technologies for value additions and processing. West African food spices and vegetables. Spices are aromatic substances that change or enhance the food's physical, sensory, or textural characteristics. The use of spices as energy and immune boosters in local food systems have been widely reported. Nations with high consumption of spices per capita were also reported to have shown lower number of COVID-19 cases per million population during the pandemic, hence driving a robust market in many parts of the world. My research team investigated the physicochemical properties of some Nigerian spices to provide data that may assist processors, promote value addition, and increase income obtainable on the value chain. Although the spices exhibited significant differences in their physical properties and proximate constituent, phytochemical screening indicated that they contain significant amounts. Furthermore, Salau et al. Investigated changes in moisture content ratio, drying rate, and effective diffusivity of some spices using 5 drying models to simulate drying process. Page model gave the best fit for ginger, while logarithm model gave the best fit for alligator pepper and turmeric. This work provides essential data for drying of these spices. There are quality specification and trade. Another doctoral student is working presently on the drying of and storage of the local onion varieties in Nigeria to develop an appropriate process for the production of onion powder. In order to complement our research efforts on thin layer drying, a multi-purpose dryer was developed for rural applications using locally available materials. The drying efficiency of the machine ranged between 62.1% and 65.5% for various crops. Our most recent efforts on spices and vegetables includes non-destructive assessment of tomatoes quality and spices with a view to developing intelligent systems for their post-harvest handling. Bananas and plantain. Adebayo 2018, under my supervision, focused its doctoral work on the production of instant noodles from banana plantains with composites. The flour samples demonstrated good functionality and were notably rich in minerals. Sensory analysis indicated 10% as the optimal substitution of banana and plantain flour in the composite, mainly because consumers' acceptability of the instant noodles was limited by color. This complements research effort towards lessening the consumption of gluten in wheat-based food products by substituting wheat with alternatives that will deliver healthier foods to consumers. As the awareness of the importance of maintaining healthy food habits is driving a paradigm change in the eating habits of different populations worldwide, the novelty of this work is significant at the food interface, especially when food with low glycemic index are preferred. Such emerging food initiatives present huge investment opportunities for food industries globally. Staple food flours and granules. Food flours, locally known as ilubo, in form of lafun, ilubo, ishu, egbodo, tuwo, or gari, are popular among different ethnic groups in Nigeria. While the Hausa of the north eats more of grain cereals as tuwo, the Igbo eats more of cassava-based staples. In contrast, the Yoruba of the western region eats more of both the combination of cereals, yam, and cassava as staple foods. Even though these products are largely consumed, there is little information regarding the quality parameters to standardize them. At all, established the physical, chemical, and quality characteristics of food flours obtained from a group of Nigerian-based staple foods that may assist processors in standardization, value addition, and packaging of these products. Our research team also recently observed that the physical-chemical properties of gari in southwestern Nigeria vary from one place to the other due to variations in the method of processing. Apart from the effect of the inconsistency on regional and international trade, poorly processed gari can be harmful to consumers given the presence of certain toxic components. The quality characteristics of gari in selected local markets were therefore investigated. As an intervention for improved product quality, an appropriate technology profile was proposed for gari processing to standardize the quality of gari in southwestern Nigeria, where it is primarily produced. Although gari is the most important cassava product in many African countries, its ability to generate foreign earnings in this country and reduce food importations is limited by appropriate technologies. In order to strengthen the cassava value chain, proposed policy intervention include regulation of garri processing by specific hygienic manufacturing practices and quality specifications with respect to consumer preferences. Okra slicing and harvesting. Slicing is the most laborious and time-consuming operation on the okra value chain. For most non-fibrous material, the compressive stress applied by a cutting tool increases the pressure on the cell wall at the point of contact. This generates high shear stress at the point of indentation and causes the tool to move in a direction parallel to the edge and perpendicular to the direction of the applied force. Based on this mechanism, our team developed a simple device which has been adopted as a unit of an integrated system for okra processing by rural women. Further step was taken to motorize the process in order to lessen the associated production by Awolowo et al. 2012. The machine, which was an improved version of Awolowo et al. 2007, consists of a feeding, slicing, and collecting unit. It is capable of slicing approximately 1 kilogram of okra pods in a batch, with slicing efficiency and throughput of 86.7% and 21 kilogram per hour, respectively. Our research team observed with great concern how okra pod irritate the fingertips and skin of women and children during harvesting. A simple machine was therefore developed for okra harvesting and evaluated in comparison with manual harvesting. The result shows that machine has a cutting efficiency, throughput capacity, and effective field capacity of 97.3, 8 okra per minute, and 25.4 hectare per hour, respectively. The novelty of this work is in the minimal physical contract that the machine provides during harvesting, thereby eliminating associated fingertips irritation. A patenting of this device is currently under view. Energy utilization and business process reengineering in the cocoa processing industry. Ogunsina et al. Worked on energy utilization of the cocoa processing in the processing of cocoa beans into powder to optimize the consumption, to optimize energy consumption in that industry. Energy utilization was evaluated for 8 major unit operations involved in cocoa processing, considering energy supply from the national grid and electric power generation by a diesel engine. The data obtained were imputed into existing energy equations to estimate the energy utilized during each unit operation. And it was found that the total energy requirements for the processing of raw cocoa beans into powder were 2.23 and 2.38 megajoules per kilogram. The most energy-intensive operations were pressing and milling, which accounts for 58% and 26.3% of the total energy consumption in the industry. For all the unit operations involved, diesel generator as a power source consumed more energy than power from the national grid as expected. From material balance, an average of 7.2 metric tons of cocoa beans yields 2.83 metric tons of cocoa powder and 2.93 metric tons of cocoa butter, with about 20.14% weight losses after processing. This work provides data on energy consumption for effective planning, utilization, and costs in the processing of cocoa beans into powder. In a doctoral work co-supervised by me, Obafemi 2018 studied the extent and level of business process re-engineering adoption in the cocoa industry. The work established the effects of BPR practices on the performance of the cocoa industry and developed a framework for implementing BPR in the industry to improve productivity. Most cocoa farmers are aged and not literate for the technologies developed for fermentation and drying. Hence, they preferred traditional methods, which use products that fall short of local and international standards. A framework was therefore developed to drive workers' access to knowledge, provide infrastructure, enforce government regulations, promote networking among key actors in the industry. And that promises a radical redesign of the cocoa processing industry for improved productivity and product quality, promotes employee and customer satisfaction. Generally, BPR helps industry to focus on customers' needs, simplify and standardize complex jobs, and automate repetitive unit operations. It brings to the fore the beauty of the interaction between man crops and machines with respect to the processing and handling of food crops for sustainability in developing economy. An appraiser of the dairy industry in Nigeria, following a martial training in Israel during which a field trip was organized to dairy farms. Milking is by a robotic system there. I carried out an appraisal of the dairy industry in Nigeria, considering the ever-increasing global demand for dairy products, the radical changes, the great prospects, and the high revenue potential that robotic making systems are brought into milk harvesting in countries with massive capacity for dairy farming. The following proposals were presented for policy consideration to boost local dairy capacity in Nigeria. The development of mobile semi-automated making units adaptable from the existing robotic milking systems that may be integrated into the old milk collection scheme by public-private partnership, operating a reward system for dairy farmers whose cows will be milked pro rata on a pay-as-you-go basis, or establishment of a smallholders cow making stations by public-private partnership initiative. Such stations may become harbor subsidiaries for the processing and production of local dairy products of acceptable international standards in harmony with socio-cultural consideration of consumers. Establishment of strategic dairy farming demonstration centers in each geopolitical zone where milk production shall concentrate on high milk yielding local breeds. Pastoralists and would-be dairy farmers should be sensitized on the high income obtainable from the dairy farming in Nigeria. Desert locust control in East Africa. Desert locusts have consistently proven to be devastating pests in the eastern part of Africa, culminating in substantial economic losses, famine, and abject poverty in vulnerable regions. Prolonged use of pesticide threatens soil-water plant symbiosis in these areas. I was among a team of researchers who reviewed the FAO documentaries to sensitize rural farmers on digital technologies for early warning and monitoring of desert locusts in Kenya. A digital mobile framework was proposed to complement existing mobile phone technologies using a reliable, low-cost, real-time mobile platform to reduce intensive capital demand of FAO and other donor organizations in desert locust control. Real-time reporting of desert locust sighting and forecast alerts were provided as a framework for global communal system that will supersede organizational response in mitigating insect pests risk for food production systems. Biofuel production from underutilized oilseeds and oilseed and biomass. An existing pyrolytic reactor by Jolo Bangboe was modified and adapted to pyrolyze cashew nut shells and empty palm fruit bunches. For cashew nut shell, there was 65% bulk reduction, and 0.25 liter of oil was obtained per kilogram of cashew nut shell, with char and tar oil of appreciable calorific values. For empty palm fruit bunches, the bulk was reduced by 55.1%. And the calorific value of the char obtained was 22.44 megajoules per kilogram. A postgraduate student whom I supervised in chemical engineering also worked on the thermochemical conversion of dry Royal Poinciana pods into biofuel using an improved version of the pyrolytic reactor. This biofuel, this bio-oil contains some chemical constituents which are valuable in the manufacture of some agrochemicals and pharmaceutical products. Based on the findings of Adeboye et al., Ogundaonsi focused his doctoral research on the optimization of combination parameters of biodiesel production from carrier seed oil using heterogeneous catalysts synthesized from the pods. The blends were evaluated for their emission characteristics in a compression ignition engine. Calcine pods show good catalytic activity with a rich presence of calcium and potassium. The biodiesel blends indicated adequate oxygenation, low viscosity, and low calorific values. When tested on compression ignition engine, fuel consumption increased as biodiesel fraction in the blend increased. Brake power and exhaust temperature were lower for biodiesel blends than with petroleum. The biodiesel conformed to acceptable standard of ASTM, American Society for Testing of Materials. Ojolo et al. Reported similar findings for jatropha seed oil, hence useful as biofuel for compression ignition engines. Biofuel conversion technologies play a significant role in production of renewable and sustainable energy sources. Biofuel from biomass is an avenue to complement energy deficits for food, agriculture, and clean energy generation, mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, and protect the environment. This corroborates the strategic role of man at the man-crops-machine interface. My awards and distinctions. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I have received the following awards and distinction-wise climbing this ladder. In 2006, I won the Israeli Marshall Scholarship to Agricultural Research Organization in Bedagan, Israel, where I trained in research and development in agricultural engineering technologies. In 2007, I was a United Nations Scholar to the National Engineering Research Center for Information Technology in Agriculture in Beijing, China. In 2008, I won the prestigious fellowship of the United Nations University of Tokyo, Japan, which was undertaken at the Central Food Technological Research Institute in Mysore, India. For the second time in 2011, I won the Mashaf Scholarship to Hebrews University of Jerusalem, Rehovot, Israel. There, my project stood out in the A+ category among several others from Europe, Latin America, and Asia. I've won many international grants, traveled to present technical papers at various international forums and conferences in many African countries, which notably includes Kenya, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Ghana, Republic of Benin, Togo, and other countries such as Israel, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Turkey, India, China, Ireland, the Netherlands, United Kingdom, and the United States of America. I am a co-investigator on the TEDFund-sponsored research project on appropriate technologies for special palm oil production in Nigeria. This research, which Professor O.K. Owolarofe leads, was one of the highest NRF OAU projects in OAU, worth about 45 million in 2019. It was intended to bridge technology gaps in the oil palm value chain and facilitate increased production of special palm oil by small and medium-scale processors in Nigeria. In 2022, I won the Netherlands Fellowship to Wageningen Center for Development and Innovation in the Netherlands. I have received the Mr. Vice Chancellor's Award, Commendation of Meritorious Service twice in this university. In 2021 and 2022 consecutively, the World Scientist and University Ranking by African Science Directory listed me among top 50 research scientists in OAU. I have collaborated with experts across various disciplines in engineering, agriculture, food and nutrition sciences, technology management, inside and outside of Obafemi University. I have served as a judge for Students' Innovation Challenge on the reputed platform of the American Society of Biological and Agricultural Engineers. And I have served as a reviewer for many top-rated journals in my domain of research. Epilogue, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir. Given the immunity I enjoy on this sacred moment, I count it a golden opportunity to express my deepest thought as I conclude. Revisiting the appropriate technology movement for a proposal for Afri-technology. There is no doubt that our technology is at the forefront of the revolution that will continue to change humanity and its means of livelihood forever. Our continent has been that of a people always being told what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, following some script written or influenced by colonialism. Some initiatives have been proposed on modernizing agriculture in Africa. However, the context of that word, modernize, worries me as it often undermines or relegates the fact that Africa was at the forefront of technology with the discovery of fire during the Old Stone Age. Sometimes when I see these bronze and Oyo Calabash artworks, many of which have been stolen by the West, I wish Africa was allowed to evolve in our own way and never colonized. We arguably could have been the model of a world that others craves by now. Let us be frank with ourselves. No one on earth is genuinely interested in developing or modernizing Africa or its agriculture unless it is inspired by Africans. No external funding, relief, aid or support will give us the Africa we want unless it is locally backed by an inspired citizenry and driven by purposeful leadership, no matter how much we try. No. The starting point is to reinvent our true identity, focusing on what stands us out. We must start mainstreaming our indigenous knowledge and traditional beliefs into education, agriculture, research, policy formulation, and all aspects of human livelihood. In post-harvest sense, since small-scale holders occupy a central place on the agri-value chain, our emphasis should be on technologies by Africa and for Africans, dedicated towards the Afro-industrial emancipation that will change Africa forever. This is what I have theorized as Afri-technology. In his inaugural lecture, M.O. Ogedengbe 1984 reminisced about academic life in the 70s and 80s, how academics were so passionate about research, even on weekends and holidays. It saddens that the indicators of our systemic failure as a nation have leaked into the supposed laboratory of ideals that the university represents. Like a hungry lion, destructive anti-intellectualism holds Nigerian universities tight by the jugular. Our minds have been so thoroughly oppressed that the academia is fast becoming a garage, a ball store for politicians, electoral officers, cynics, and traders. It is no overstatement that the leaders of the blessed country that Nigeria is have disappointed us in Syria terms. They scorn and scorn intellectualism, desecrating our educational system in a manner that repels the youth to whom the future belongs. Teeming populations, through arduous routine, wallow in abject poverty, ravaged by youth unemployment, insurgency, banditry, terrorism, and socio-political crisis. The pillars that make a nation exist have been eroded by corruption, while ethnic violence and religious bigotry tick like a time bomb. The indignity and helplessness of many Nigerian immigrants in the diaspora, the generational conflict that children unborn may be subjected to, will not end until our prestigious status as the most populous black nation on earth changes positively. We must continually enlighten ourselves so that someday the tyranny and oppression of our bodies and mind will vanish like evil spirits. To all of us, let us go back to our offices, schools, mosques, churches, markets, industries, workshops, and homes to reconfigure our minds commensurately to the Nigeria we want. Leaders, lecturers, students, researchers, and human rights advocates, politicians and policymakers, rulers alike, must be committed to raising a new class of men who will restore dignity, the dignity of scholarship before the Nigerian educational system crashes irredeemably. As for me, I will continue to pursue knowledge and the exploration of the unknown, preserve the freedom of inquisition, and support education and research and post-harvest engineering towards a fuel-secure Nigeria. Let no one feel spent or disenfranchised, saying, I've paid my dues, and I can do no more. After all, the Bible tells us to occupy till he comes. Otherwise, may we not tell our grandchildren and great-grandchildren stories of how we, as the wealthiest country in sub-Saharan Africa, keep battling pervasive hunger, misery, and poverty amidst vast resources and plentiful harvest. And it is in our hands. Remarks. When I joined this university, reunion with my old friends, Professors Femi Ajayi and Shola Aderomu and Gbemi Sola Adeoti, largely inspired the positive energy I needed to begin with. My seniors, Professor Oke Owolarafe and Peyo Adekalu, were very quick to perceive the fire in me from the word go. The name Owolarafe is perhaps the most recurrent in my list of co-authored publications, about 70. As my immediate senior in the area of post-harvest engineering, our interests aligned within a very short time. He did not only fuel the fire, he also fanned it until a clean flame began to burn. I can remember how my friend, Professor Shola Aderomu, would call me almost every evening, jocularly. That means, Babs, where are you? Are you still in the office? Well, you better don't kill yourself with books. So it's better you come out and relax so that you can go back and lock up again. Somehow, those joking moments energized me to work without distraction from day one, focusing only on the end point. Gratitude. I have so much to be grateful for, ladies and gentlemen. My biological family, my parents, Pa Olagoke and Mama Titilayo Ogunsina, they laid the proper foundation and inspired us to seek wisdom and knowledge early in life. Their matchless passion for education, discipline, and scholarship brought me where and made me what I am today. I appreciate God's grace upon my mother-in-law, Mama Deborah Ige Ogunshola, who is here seated. She's our only surviving biological parent. Mama, you can stand up. I appreciate late Barrister J. Adeige and Mama Anna Ige for raising a pretty daughter so appropriately and perfectly tailored to be my wife. Salutations to her, my darling wife. I dove my heart for you. Whose 50th birthday this anniversary lecture connotes, this birthday anniversary, this lecture connotes her fortitude, encouragement, cooperation, reassurance, and peace contributed significantly to the man I have become. Promise peace and joy as children. They sacrificed their costly share of my time and attention and time in favor of a PhD degree. I thank them for this. My younger brother, Akin, who was my best confidant in those years, I thank him. My siblings, Layemi, Tope and Lanike, Lolalere, Ronke, Shegun, Olabi, and Peju Olabi are simply the best. My childhood adventure with Jumoke, Shegun, Adeola, and Biodun they remain unforgettable. I thank my in-laws, especially Mr. Wale Ike, Mr. Dara Ike, Mr. Lanike, Balogun, for their supportive roles, and Femi Ogunshola during child nursing. All elders and community leaders leaders and elites of Ilero in Okeogun and Shaki and the entire Okeogun origin, prominent in that representation, Here is Professor Ladi Ladipo from the College of Medicine, University of Ibadan. My maternal uncle Alhaji Najib Abayomi Bello and his wife, they took care of me selflessly while I roamed the streets of Ibadan, Lagos and Port Harcourt in the early 90s as a fresh graduate looking for a job. My spiritual family, the spiritual mentorship of Reverend Muyiwa Mako was very cardinal in my life when I started life afresh, and I can never forget. I appreciate the entire members of Trem Family Ibadan and Redeemed Christian Church of God, King's Court OAU, for their inestimable spiritual uplifting all the way. My teachers, the unparalleled love and commitment and role modeling of Professor A.O.A.I. Bangboye, who was my PhD mentor, cannot be quantified. Our interaction has made UI, Department of Agricultural Engineering, my home any day. I acknowledge all my teachers here in Obafemi Awolowo University, in the University of Ibadan, and the Polytechnic Ibadan, many of whom are seated here, for the positive roles they played in our lives all the way. Dr. V. Prakash, the director of CFTRI and coordinator of United Nations University, he gave direction to my research and fellowship in India. The enthusiasm and selfless commitment of my direct host, Dr. Mrs. C. Radha and T.N. Indira, who are also with us virtually right now, they ultimately drove me to the distinction I enjoy today in this university and outside in the area of food process engineering. The cooperation and diligence of Dr. Govardhan Singh, Ajit Bhatnagar, and Dasapa Indrani, who also are virtually present, they are well appreciated. My scholarly engagements and adventures in various institutions around the world leave very cherished memories. I thank my friend Mr. Peter Adewoyin, Kola Oyediran, Barrister Wale Adegoke, Yangi Oyegunde, Shola Oyeniran, Biola Akiyemi. They have been my most consistent friends over the past 5 decades. I'm extremely grateful to the staff and students of Agricultural Engineering Department, Agricultural and Environmental Department of Obafemi Awolowo University. I appreciate the inspiration of Professor Elo Ogunjimi as the lead agric engineer from Okeogun origin. I thank Professor L.A. Sani, who first introduced me to the Israeli Mashal Scholarship. That apart being from my first offshore experience, I won that scholarship twice. I do not forget the painstaking effort of Professor Faborode, who took me to the Israeli embassy in Abuja as the Dean Faculty of Technology for a visa interview. My interaction with J. Oshubiton, Professor J. Oshubiton, as my first office mate, influenced my early choices on the job significantly. The roles of late Kehinde Locke and Engineer Obafemi Ogunsina in making the workplace comfortable for me are noteworthy. I acknowledge a brother and a friend, a colleague, and my elder, Dr. Isaac Alawi, with whom I shared early career adventures at the cashew nut processing industry. He's of the First Technical University presently. All my mentees have motivated me tremendously by their giant strides they have made in their chosen careers. I acknowledge all students in the Faculty of Technology, Faculty of Agriculture, whom I've taught over the years for the rare privilege I had to teach all of you. I appreciate all the members of IFE, Agric Engineering Alumni Society, ably represented here tonight by Ms. Lydia Agbola, who is one of their executives. I notably acknowledge my friend, Engineer Shola Ogumelui, the Managing Director of Technomite Limited. He has consistently been my friend, my best friend, in the 1991 graduating class, and he remains so up to date. He's here seated. I acknowledge Mr. Paul Oladele, Dr. Murakiyo, Engineer Kenny Idowu, and other classmates of the 1985-86 graduating set from the Polytechnic Ibadan Shaki campus. I thank my MSc classmates, the 1996 set from University of Ibadan, and especially Professor S.J. Ojolo, who is the current head of Mechanical Engineering University of Lagos. He contributed significantly to my PhD research. We were supervised by the same supervisor. During my engagement in the local government service of Oyo State, Alhaji Nureni Oluseyitan proved to be a rare breed among folks whom I've ever worked with in my life. I appreciate him for this distinct virtue. Èmi kò lè ṣe kẹ́mi má yọ̀ Olúwa o. Túndé, èmi kò lè ṣe kẹ́mi má yọ̀ Olúwa o. Bàbá mi ló jẹ́ Ọlọ́run àgbàlagbà. Bàbá mi ló jẹ́ lẹ́yìn rẹ̀ kò sẹ́lòmíràn. Èmi kò lè ṣe kẹ́mi má yọ̀ Olúwa o. Hallelujah. Mr. Vice Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, at this juncture, I rest my case.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, no, no. Ẹ ṣé ẹ̀gbọ́n.